Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Topic of the Week. It's Friday, so you know it's Topic of the Week time. So, you know what? Today, we're going to dispatch with a lot of preamble. Last week's topic was about conventions. I went to Adepticon. It was super awesome. Scott R. had a great response. I'll link the original video down below. Go watch his. It's good. I really liked it. I'm not going to get too deep into it because I want to move straight into this week's topic. Because let's get ready. Here we go. We're going to get serious this week, folks. All right. There you go. You couldn't probably hear that, but the knuckles were cracked. All right. So this week we're talking about diversity and inclusion in wargaming. That's right. We're going to do it. And we're going to do it because it's something that's kind of come up a couple times this week. And I feel like it's something important to talk about. So there you go. And I'm going to try to approach this in what I hope is a measured and even way. And there are a lot of very hot emotions about this. About a year ago, almost, one of our topics was about women in wargaming. And that's going to be some portion of what we talk about today. But we're going to go farther than that. And in that, of course, some commenters accused me of sort of having this social justice warrior agenda or whatever, which gets thrown around as a derisive term, I suppose. That's not what I'm all about. So I'm going to get my hypothesis out of the way right up top here, okay? And I hope that this is non-controversial, but let's see. The community that we as wargamers should be seeking to create at all times is a respectful and inclusive one that welcomes new players into the hobby. There you go. So, if you heard what I just said and you soundly disagree with it, you just thought, nope, I don't think that's correct. Okay? If you think that basic civility and sort of common decency in how you interact with your fellow human beings is inappropriate, then please stop this video and move along, because I have nothing to say to you. I don't know what conversation we could have. Okay? But I don't think that's going to be the case for most people. I think most people would find that statement and agree with it. What convinced me to make this the topic of the week was Gloomdready Gaming, who's on. She's been on Andy and Rem many times. Just shut down her channel or took a break from the hobby or whatever you want to say about a day ago. I'll link the video where she explains why, because I think it's worth listening to. It's really good. But if I can improperly summarize what the main thrust of it was because there was a sort of series of ongoing harassments and general culture problems that she's basically just tired of dealing with. And so has just willingly taken self out and said, it's fine, I'm just going to step away. And the video is very, very measured. And I think that I don't think we often think about sort of diversity and inclusion and making sure that we have a friendly community. And I think it's a thing we can't afford not to think about. Because we're a really small community. And the reality is we're still a fringe bunch of weirdos. And I proudly wear that badge. We play with little plastic toys. And that's something that's still, that didn't make its way in. A lot of things that were nerdy, comic books and, even like card games and stuff like that, those have all become ingrained. I don't know that those are even really nerdy anymore. They're almost popular culture now. But painting little plastic people, right, is still seen as a bit strange by a lot of the population. And I think when you're already kind of a group of people who are strange or weird or whatever, or outcasts, or maybe you're the completely normal person. You just happen to like this hobby. Don't think of yourself as weird. That's all fine. Okay? I do think of myself as a nerd and weird, and that's okay. You can certainly construct your own self-image however you want. But I think as that small community, we can't afford to also then be elitist. Or have a culture that's damaging to others who could join us. So let me go through a series of a couple things that happened this week that made me want to do this as a topic. I was at Adepticon, and when I looked around the room which contained Ninth Age, Kings of War, Age of Sigmar, and Malifaux, the room was basically white males. Now, that's not 100% true, of course. But it was, there certainly wasn't much diversity there. Okay? And again, I'm not sort of on the board of like everything needs to match the greater population. People are going to self-select. People are going to follow the hobbies that interest them. That's all fine. There's nothing wrong with having it. There's nothing necessarily wrong with having inaccurate percentages. Not even close. Okay? Like, that's fine. Certain things people self-select into because it's interesting, or it's the sort of psychographic profile of the average person who does it matches up better with men or women or people of certain backgrounds, and that's all great. That's not bad. That's fantastic. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay? So I am not on, like, the committee of 50-50 or something. So if that was what you thought, where you thought I was going, where you were going to type something like that, please don't. Okay? However, that sort of got me thinking about the general culture. And then on Warhammer Weekly, we covered the thing that went up on the blog of the woman who had encountered sort of repeated harassment throughout her time in Wargaming. Gloomdreddy mentioned it. Another member of the community shared, a personal story of sort of just being, really treated roughly as a new player, right? And so it all kind of got wrapped up. Again, I don't see this as a male, female, white, black, or whatever issue. That's not what I'm on about here, okay? Because it's not about pushing to hit some kind of numbers or markers or something like that. To me, the question that I think we have to ask ourselves as a community is, are we being as good and open as welcoming as we should be? And I think the answer to that is no. I think there's a lot of things that are passable in our culture. I think there is kind of a bro culture in gaming. And we kind of let that slide and don't think about how that can push other people out. Now, recently there was a discussion that happened around this where somebody basically implied that the two options of the world are hardcore bro culture and like the worst possible jokes or whatever, that, things that sort of many people would not find funny. Or this completely weak sauce, everybody's afraid and walking around on eggshells culture where no one ever pushes the envelope. And that's the common response to this, right? It's a slippery slope. It's this binary thing. And I completely disbelieve that. That's nonsense. And if you think it, you're wrong. Period. And I can prove it to you. You ready? Every other experience you have every day with every person you meet on the street and in public. It's that easy. All right? We all work with a bunch of other people, and we meet with them, and you sit in Starbucks, or you have a conversation with somebody, you're on the bus, whatever. It's just civility. Right? We all manage to basically get along every day. I flew through a bunch of airports. I talked to random people. I sat next to people on the plane. I was at a convention this week. I talked to 30 or 40 different people. Perfectly pleasant conversations. Was fine. So, civility is possible. I'm not asking for any kind of extreme. What I am asking for, and what I think we need to expect of ourselves as a culture, is sort of a higher standard of civility, frankly. And I'm not a person who's against improper humor. I love jokes that push it, and I love comedians that push it. But there's a difference. And the difference is this. That comedian has a show where you went to hear jokes where they push it. They know they do that. That's what you went there for. Right? You didn't go to this war game store or convention or tournament or whatever to hear that. It's about context, right? Most of life is about context. Let's go to a non-controversial example. I don't like it when doctors, me personally, I don't like it when I hear people describe like internal organs being removed and blood and guts and inside like stuff being out on tables and like the details of that sort of thing. It kind of freaks me out. Okay? That's on me. That's my thing. But if I went to the doctor and they were describing surgery, I would be like, oh, that's, yeah, they're going to talk about that. It's context, right? But if I'm like sitting in Starbucks and somebody's having a really loud conversation about that sort of thing, I'd be like, huh, that's weird, right? It seems like it's out of context. You can pick your thing. And again, I'm not saying that like they necessarily have some kind of responsibility. I'm not trying to make rules and stuff like that. I'm not trying to come down on people and bring in the thought police or Big Brother, which is the other nonsensical argument that always gets trotted out here, right? Of like, don't tell me how to act. I'm not telling you how to act. I'm asking you to act in a certain way. That's it. If you don't want to, that's fine. Don't. Cool. I mean, whatever. It's your life. You do what you want. Okay? But there are consequences to that. And so what I'm thinking, or what I'm asking is, I think most of the people who watch this are probably civil and probably don't have these conversations or create this culture and stuff like that. I think some of us might do it sometimes innocently. That is to say, we don't even realize that the jokes we're doing might be, or the comments we're making might be seen as inappropriate to some people. Let me put a pin on this to be very clear. All right, and this whole video is going to be, I can already know that this is going to get blown up and people are going to hate this, but that's all right. Let's just be very clear. There's a lot of like very coarse sexualism jokes or rape jokes or stuff like that that can often get made in this sort of scenario, right? At conventions, at game stores, in tournaments, whatever. And some people that really does bother them. And one of the things that Gloomdreddy said in her video, which I thought was such an amazing analogy, was imagine you're born with some with a rubber band around your wrist. Everybody has at some point in their life probably put a rubber band around their wrist and snapped it, right? And stung the inside of your wrist. It hurts. It's not going to kill you. It's not the end of the world. You don't like it, right? It's just like, that's uncomfortable. I don't like it, right? And she said, imagine if you were born with sort of a magic rubber band around your wrist you couldn't remove. And in your normal course of your day, people would just walk up and snap it and sting you and not even know what they were doing, right? And that's how you live every day, right? And in the video, she said, now, it's if you're one of those people who doesn't have to put up with that or doesn't realize that, who doesn't have the rubber band, then you have a nice life in this. What I would say is, everybody's got the rubber band. I think that for a lot of us, though, we have the luxury of not having anybody ever snap it. And what I mean by that is, if you think, no, I don't want to change my culture. Our culture's about having these things and this very sort of bro culture and these jokes and these things are appropriate in this context and we're not going to change. Again, that's fine. I'm not telling you have to. I'm not telling you anything. I'm simply offering some thoughts. But what I would say is, I'm willing to believe you probably care about things. Some things. I don't know what those things are. They could be your religion, your parents, your children, your whatever, right? But there's got to be a thing you probably care about some. And it could be of varying levels of import, from like your sports team, which is a fairly maybe trivial thing, although some people certainly treat it as much more, right? Could be very serious to someone. Or all the way up to issues of your sexuality or you know, your gender identity or your past sort of traumatic experiences in life, which I would argue you should take very seriously. And I think, imagine if your thing that you cared about, religion, your family, whatever, I don't care what it is. Imagine if the jokes, if the discussion, if the environment in the hobby that you loved was constantly derisive and vitriolic toward that thing you cared about. Imagine if your rubber band was being snapped constantly, right? I'm guessing you would probably find that uncomfortable, and it would make you sad. It wouldn't kill you. And yes, you could just walk away, of course. Like, you can just walk away. Maybe you just toughen up, but it still hurts. It still stings. And eventually you might just get tired of it, right? And yes, people should generally be tough. And no, people do not have a right to not be offended. That is to say, sometimes you're going to be offended in life. You got to deal with that. I'm totally in with that. Okay? But I think that all of us have a responsibility to be civil. And I think that maybe the level of civility in our culture right now, in our game stores and stuff like that, isn't maybe where it should be. And that we as individuals can do better. I'm not telling you to. I'm just saying, wouldn't we want that? Wouldn't we want the most civil culture possible? That's the most inviting to new people, that grows the hobby, that brings in more players? It just seems obvious to me, right? I don't get why we would want anything else. Yeah. So that's, I think, most of what I have to say about this. I'm going to link Gloom's video down below. And as I said, I would encourage you to go watch it. There's going to be a lot of links. I'll also link my original Women in Wargaming topic from last year. And again, this isn't just about the male-female ratio or anything like that. It's about a lot of things. And what I really want to make this topic about is our culture, diversity and inclusion. And maybe the question you would ask is, all right, well, I am a person of fair mind who wants to be inclusive. How do you handle the person who's out there running roughshod, who's doing that? And my answer is that's tough. If you're somebody who's prone to agree with me and you want to see the culture improve, what do you do? Well, I think one thing you can do is just talk about it. I don't think that this video is going to solve the problem. I don't even know if it's going to make it any better at all. And that's not why I'm making it. Okay? I'm making it because I think it's an important thing to talk about. And sometimes that's enough, I guess. My response of how do I make it better would be, you don't go try to like flame trolls back and stuff like that. You don't feed the troll. My general response if someone leaves a comment like that on my video is to sort of just not engage and hope they move along. And that's a good response, I suppose, sometimes, but it's pretty passive. If I had to pick one thing to do, if you see a comment, and maybe this is a thing, maybe it's not. I don't know. I'd love to hear your feedback on this. But here was my thought. I mentioned on the show the Superman frown campaign from back in the 30s and 40s. That when somebody made, an off-color racist joke, you were supposed to just frown at them and use that social pressure to control them. So some part of me thought it might be funny if, one, you do that in your game store and you're just, as opposed to engaging them. And because the problem is if you really start to attack them or something like that, you're going to put them on the back foot. They're going to get defensive. That's not a real way to move people, right? People are, if you engage people aggressively, they don't tend to respond positively. And I get that. That's understandable. We're all humans. That's how we act. I've done that plenty of times. But I think maybe you just frown. And maybe if it's a video and somebody makes the comment, maybe your reply is just a little frowny face. And maybe when that person gets like 10 little frowny face responses, but nothing to actually engage with, maybe you don't try to do that. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether or not that's a good idea. I'm not trying to start like some campaign. It was a thought that occurred to me. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I'd love your thoughts on it. So, this week's topic. It's a hot one. Diversity, inclusion, and community in wargaming. How's your community Do you feel that there is a culture that can exclude people? Do you feel we should be more civil and inclusive to other people? I know there are devils in the details of that. And again, I'm not trying to tell you what to do or say that suddenly we need to all walk around on eggshells all the time. You're not. People are going to sometimes get offended or feel bad or something like that, and that's going to happen. I'm not aiming at that. You're just aiming at the normal level of civility you literally encounter in every other interaction you have in every other part of your life every day. Pretty much. Seems like a reasonable bar. Have you had any experiences with this yourself? I'm not, again, as with previous topics where things should be sensitive, I'm not asking you to overshare something sensitive. So please only share what you're comfortable with. But that being said, if you do have a story you're comfortable with, I think it is good to talk about it to get it out there. Because one of the problems for somebody who, like myself, I mean, honestly, I've never ran into anything, but I have the luxury of that, right? I've never ran into that kind of thing. And so it's easy for me to believe it's not there. And that's not fair. So, and then finally, what do you think the right action is to take? Maybe we can all decide of a way that we act sort of together if a really good idea comes up. I don't know. I hope to spark the conversation. I hope a bunch of people don't think that I'm trying to be unfair to anybody. I'm not calling out anyone in particular. And by the way, I believe that most members of this community are good people. The vast majority. So many people I've met in this community I consider friends, real friends. And that's a short list, folks. But most of you are the best people. And that's why I'm making this video and why I care. Because honestly, if I thought this community was a bunch of jerks and just a bunch of people who weren't worth my time, I wouldn't do this. Because it wouldn't be worth it. It's because I believe that the people who participate, you watching right now, and the people you interact with, for the most part, the people I meet at tournaments and stuff like that, are some of the best people. And that's why I think we can hit this. Okay? So, there you go. Lots of videos linked below. Thank you, as always, for watching. I look forward to your responses. They will be posted down below. See you next time.